If you were to give an advice to this rookie heat treat engineer that you have learned through your career, things that they didn't teach you in school. It can be about business, it can be about heat treating, it can be I don't know, like a personal advice. What will you tell this guy?
Um, you know, I think I would start by networking. You know, there's a tremendous amount of resources, like you said, in books and online. But having a resource that you can talk to, so having an individual that's an engineer or an individual that's in the heat treat process, where I go to an ADCAT meeting or meet with people on the CQI advisory team. Having those resources is so valuable, and I've been very fortunate, partly because of the role. I get out and I see a lot of different places and had a chance to meet a lot of people. But I would encourage everybody, especially just getting into the industry, to find that opportunity to get out and to network, to go to an ASM chapter meeting, um, and meet they're attended by you know some young people, some old people. Engage with them, and might find something in common as far as a challenge that you have on your shop. So that would be the first thing
Yeah,
that I would.
right now it's a little difficult without shows or conventions. So,
It
but
is.
you actually gave this advice to me many years ago, and I actually follow it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I believe I connected now. But you have to be constantly out there meeting people, talking to strangers, right?
yeah,
Basically,
yeah,
but the stranger will know about the subject you want to talk about, right?
yeah,
And they have similar problems, they have similar vendors. Uh,
hmm,
Challenges, customers, you name it, right?
right.
But I believe it's a great advice, on every industry, right?
Yeah. Well, and I tell you, nothing's more rewarding when somebody calls you and asks you for assistance in something. It's great to be able to reach out to get help, but when somebody actually calls you for something, it's very rewarding because they trust in you. There's something knowledgeable that you can provide to them. It's a win-win. So
It is. It is.
yeah,
Well, this is Jimmy Oaks, one of the most influential people on heat treating. Thank you, Jim, for being on the show.
yeah.
And hopefully, it's not the last time we actually talk. We have so much to talk about. Thanks for being here. Something else that you would like to tell the audience, the heat treating audience?
No, I just, I again, I certainly appreciate that, the opportunity. I've been very fortunate to have a great team here, at SSI with our guys on Stevenson leadership, and a great group at every level. The offices that we have around the world supporting our products, and great partners and stuff. So
Well, I'll just say that I've been in the industry for about 13 years, and I was already in my 40s when I got into the heat treat industry, and I've been really fortunate to work with a lot of great people here at AFC Holcroft. Um, you know, uh, Bill Disler, Bernie Perry, Ron Walagora, Jerry Winio, the list goes on and on. But what I would encourage all of the young people out there who are looking at getting in the industry or just getting into the industry, it's a very fun, unique industry to be involved in. Um, you get the opportunity. I mean, there's not many products out there where there's not some type of heat treating done in within that product, no matter what it might be. So the opportunity is to learn is endless, and I would just encourage you to listen to the people who have been in the industry for many years, because we've got a lot of great people in this industry that have spent their entire careers in this industry, and they're a wealth of knowledge. Listen to those people, bring new ideas to the table, and they'll listen to you. I mean, it's a great industry. We've got a lot of great people in this industry, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Oh, well, you know what? I'll tell any engineer that whatever you want to do, you can do it.
Hmm.
You have to put lot of hours in it. You have to put a lot of effort. You have to sacrifice a lot of family time and things like that. But if you really want to do it and you want to go out in the world and compete, you have to do it right. You have to want to be the best. You cannot just go out and do something just for the fun of it. And I mean, if you want to really make something out of it, like we're finally doing, you have to want to be the best because that'll give you a lot of satisfaction and love for what you do. And that's what we want. We want to be the best. And
Very
that's
passionate
why
words.
we keep improving.
I think I'll go twofold on this one. Number one, we all get a little bit fiery at times. So my first advice to everyone, and not joking here, anytime you type up an email that maybe someone's offended you or upset you, don't hit send that night. Wait till the next day. I mean, how many times have you've probably been upset with somebody, Carlos, right? You know, that email never is effective on the first day. So don't wait till the next day, polish it up, send it, and it tends to hit target. The next one is probably just confidence in, you know, the scientific process. We talked about this sick furnace test, and really it's nothing complicated. But when you look at scrap parts, what happens, right? People get overwhelmed. It seems like a really big task. But one of my favorite sayings before is, you know, how do you eat an elephant, Carlos? How do you eat an elephant?
By parts.
One bite
One
at a
bite
time.
at a time.
One bite at a time. So every problem seems large, but it's really just a bunch of small problems hanging out, and you just got to sift through those small problems until you get to the answer. So that's my other big one. Have confidence and learn to not get overwhelmed and go about any problem as just a series of small problems, and solve one, prove it's either the problem or not, and then move on to the next one. But ultimately, whether it's a stack of AMS papers or specifications that you got to try to get compliant with and seems overwhelming, or a furnace that's got bad parts or a valve that's not opening, it's just a matter of thinking through the process, and you'll get there. They always do.
Make sure that's what you want to do for life, because once you get into heat treat industry,
Great. Just love it. Just love it.
you gotta love it. But once you're in it, you're not gonna want to leave, and you're gonna learn something new almost every single day. You will, as long as you keep your mind open. You're gonna learn.
I just love what you said. I tell everybody this is a very interesting industry. We're very passionate about what we do, and once it gets you,
You're in.
you're in.
Right.
And the guys that they kind of struggle, if they don't like it, they're gonna be here for a long time.
Right.
But most of the guys like it.
And so when they, you go to a heat treat shop for me, and I get to see a huge variety of different things. And you'll be somewhere, and you'll be like a commercial heat treat shop, and you're like, what is this and what's it used for? Your goal is to try and figure it out without the customer telling you.
Mhm.
It's not always successful. You're not always successful in figuring it out.
Fantastic. Thanks for the show.
Well, first of all, you need to prepare yourself by getting a proper engineering education, which you've done, Carlos.
Thank you.
You need to be willing to work hard and learn management and accounting principles on top of that. That's really the advice. I've been very lucky in that I love heat treating, solving material engineering problems for customers, providing jobs for employees, and making a good living for my family. Thermal processing is a field that is not going to go away. So you got job security your whole career. It'll change, but it's not an industry that's likely to suffer a major paradigm shift in our lifetime. Just like you're doing, you can become a power player in the heat treating industry. You just have to apply yourself and, of course, have luck. And I define luck as where preparation meets opportunity.
There is a common thing that I say to students when they're getting out of school, because generally they don't know what they want to specialize in when they're leaving college. Say yes. When they go to their employer and the employer says out loud, there's this problem that we've got, I say to that person just to raise their hand at problem. They can't do themselves any harm because nobody else has solved the problem to date. Odds are they'll find a way to solve the problem, and then they'll know how that's done. And their boss will look at them and say, wow, that's amazing that they volunteered to do that. And then along the way, if you say yes enough times, you can become the king of that. And you know, it's nice to know a little bit about everything, but it's great to be the king of something. And you will find that out along the way. But to get there, you have to say yes to problems that going in, you don't even have any idea how to solve them, but you will solve them. So that's
So basically,
my piece of advice.
is not to be afraid to raise your hand and say, I'll figure it out.
If they're to date, then you have no risk at trying to solve it. Even if you can't solve it, you come back and say, I tried this, this, and this, and it didn't solve it. Your boss is in no worse position than he was when he started because nobody else had solved it either. So just say yes and go in and solve the problem and learn that skill and move on. And that's where experience comes from.
I think for me, it's from a life standpoint, acting with humility, realizing when you're wrong about something and asking a lot of questions. So I notice when I'm talking to people, young or old, that aren't great listeners, they sit there and interrupt. And I feel like if you're moving into a new business, you're getting into a new career, ask questions and be willing to sit there and listen. You don't have to sit there and have all the answers. So come in with humility, be willing to ask a question for somebody. So many people are so poor at conversations these days because they don't ask each other questions and express genuine interest about the other person. They're just sitting there talking about themselves. And there's nothing I get more annoyed about than sitting there and be like, well, it was great to see you. I haven't seen you in 2 years and you just talked for 20 minutes about yourself and didn't ask me a single question about me. So I think be conscientious about that, be humble in everything that you do, and don't be afraid to ask questions about the person that you're speaking with.
I would say get involved as early as possible. So there's the lure straight out of college to go and work for a very large company. Don't overlook the opportunities provided by a small company. They don't have the names like Aerojet Rocketdyne or Boeing or Raytheon, Lockheed, but in a small company, you will get exposed to so much more. You won't be a cog in a wheel. You are responsible and exposed to the entire operation. So if I was a new person, I would look for an extremely successful small business, not necessarily family owned, but a small business that you can get involved in during one of their active growth phases. Somebody that knows where they're going, has a great mission that you buy into, and then hang out there and try to work your way around and get exposed to as many things as possible so that you aren't thrown in a room just looking at heat treat charts for the rest of your life for one process. You know, get that exposure. You will be 10 times more valuable because of it.
Sure. From the heat treat department and from just in life in general and experience, I think for me, it's never been anything more rewarding than earning the respect of somebody that you respect. So I think that's a very key part of growth and growing in experience, and also surround yourself with smart people and ask clear and good questions and have good things to input as well into those discussions, and don't be afraid to have those things. I can tell you in some cases, growing through management, you have some people that are very persistent, and you find out that those are the ones that will be successful because they're persistent and they're asking a lot of questions. And eventually they'll ask the right ones to the right people, and they'll go far. So I would say, don't stop asking questions, and earn the respect of the people that you feel are intelligent in the industry. And I really appreciate being on your podcast and being part of the group of people that you've asked to come on here is flattering, because I respect them all a lot, as well as you. And I think that's really important to bring these people together. And one comment about the topics that we talk about as heat treaters, whether you're a vacuum guy or atmosphere guy or whatever, There's certainly nothing that you can talk about at the kitchen table with your family, and this is a great outlet for that to be a podcast for everybody. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, I just I don't tell my neighbors anymore what I do. You meet friends at other events and you don't talk about what you just say. Yeah, we work with in the automotive business.
Right.
You do you make parts or something like that. You don't really talk about heat treat. So I appreciate the outlet or the avenue you've given us with this podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I mean, we sourcing a lot, right, with heat treater, and I saw many different heat treaters, and what was very, very important, and I'm talking it from a company standpoint, and then we can go maybe on a personal level, what I think, but on a company standpoint, I think as a heat treater, put a lot of energy in traceability, and that you have your processes under control, and that you can show us, yep, this was the heat, that this was the temperature, this was the time, that exactly this lot. The biggest issues we have with suppliers is that they don't have lot control and mixing parts, and then we lose the trust. So there is some who really master that in the industry, and those had also tremendous growth the last couple of years. And I think it has a lot to do that they can demonstrate to their customer how efficiently and how proficiency they are in controlling the entire process and documenting it too for your customer in an easy way. I think that's kind of almost the deciding factor if we go now to a heat treat. If we go to somebody and say, oh, we put it here in, and here is, and this is Jimmy, he loads here and this and that. But then we go to a different company and say, look, that's our process. This is the lot size, 1,500 pieces. It goes into that temperature, it goes to that. And afterwards, this is the printout. That's how it looks. I think that's a huge value for a heat treater. As a customer, right? I'm talking now as a customer because we have millions of parts that get heat treated. And this is how we assess a heat treater, really. So, and I still think, coming back to, you said, what do you do if you're a young person or so, I still think it's what I always loved about our industry, we, even in sales, if we sell a part, we're building a tool, we then get steel, and you have a real product in front of you. And at the end, you can tell your kids, okay, for example, we do the Bronco, the seat adjust in the Bronco. I mean, I'm proud, right, to be on this platform. And I haven't sold an insurance paper or whatever, right? And it's a printout and it's a file somewhere, it's a product behind it, and I'm really, really proud about doing that. So.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's an amazing comment.
Carlos.
I guess one of the main things is when it comes down to equipment and selecting equipment, it is absolutely crucial that the equipment is sized correctly. I mean, the recipe for going broke, either as a captive commercial heat treater or a commercial, is running equipment which isn't fully utilized, which is not full all the time. That is a recipe for absolute disaster. So I guess we're looking at it from a technology standpoint. One of the main things is when you're getting furnaces, you size the furnaces for what your current demands are and what your future demands are going to be. That's probably the first thing that I would suggest.
Yeah, just having natural curiosity about what we're doing. I mean, as you mentioned, it's not a very sexy industry. It's in the end of the day, exactly what it is. We're heating steel and we're cooling it as fast as we can and hoping we get something good out of it. But part of my experience, again, coming from I was electrical engineer, had no real experience in heat treatment, and then kind of coming in here in a role to try to kind of take this and grow this business further. Yeah, having a natural curiosity about the products that you're treating, understanding the applications of it. You know, I'm a technical person, but I'm also not a technical person. You know, I'm not a metallurgist. I don't understand how they make the steel. I get it to a degree, but not a whole lot. But you know, because we're highly automotive and highly, well, general industry as well, just understanding where the part is coming from, who's making it, and then seeing where it actually ends up. You know, transmission parts, you get to see, you know, and similar, we have parts that, and then, I mean, other curiosity that I've just general myself is just understanding the supply chain has been astronomical to understand that parts, you know, sometimes get made in.
It is amazing to understand supply chain. Right?
Yeah, it comes from Taiwan, it gets heat treated in Toronto, it gets sent to Mexico, then it comes back to Windsor. I mean, it's unbelievable. And to just see the amount of people that are involved with it. And then you finally get to touch it and you get to put your personal touch on it. And, you know, I personally take a lot of pride in the fact to know that I know there's vehicles out there that have parts that have been run at Medex. And I think that curiosity about those items can really invigorate that spirit of heat treating, because yes, it's not sexy, but it is critical, and there is a lot of things depending on it. So,
and I tell this to people: we might not be in a sexy industry as the fashion industry, but this industry is very interesting, right?
Exactly.
It's make you think. It makes you a problem solver, and you get exposed to the supply chain, right? Yeah. And talking to some guys, we might even do some rocket science, right? There's fasteners that might go on the space program, right? So that's what we do to make the world better, right? So we might not be, let's say, on the sport industry, which is a little more fancier, but you know, our industry is super interesting, and I really like to see the expression of the faces when I actually did, because but you actually explain this with a big smile on your face, right? I don't know, you noticed that, so yeah, that actually expresses your passion whenever you're talking about what you do, right? And and I believe that's like that's our goal. That's how we want to get to Smile, this new engineer that he just got promoted to run the heat treat shop.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
So
and I think this podcast is a good way to showcase that. I think it, definitely can have people have some pride in what they're doing.
Yeah,
I think that's the important part of it all.
Well, I would recommend that any new engineer graduating from college or technical school or anything like that, start doing the engineering work, but after a short period of time, say 6 months or so, go and work in a shop, in a manufacturing shop, and learn how to cut, weld, lay brick, wire. And then after that, go out in the field and do the install of that equipment and dealing with the customer, solving the field problems that come up every project that you have. And then after that, then you can go back to doing the design work in the at the facility at AFC Holcroft or wherever the OEM is. But I mean, any valuable experience you're going to learn, you need to diversify yourself and learn all aspects of the business. That's what Heather Falcone said on that one podcast, and I totally agree with her that, you know, with a smaller company, you have a lot more opportunity to move around to different departments and find what's your area of expertise and what you really like to do.
I think the first thing is to pay more attention, because I know I certainly didn't pay any attention. If I had paid attention, I would have been a lot further ahead than where I am today. Wow, some question that is really. I think for me, just pay attention. Listen to the older generation, because when you're that young, you do not listen to the older. When I remember when I got called into a meeting when I was just coming out of my apprenticeship about pensions And it was like, why do I want to think about my pension? I'm 40 years away from even thinking about my pension. But now I'm closer to that pension age. I wish I'd have listened.
Yeah, I think again, without being a heat treater or a metallurgist, I think keep an open mind to different technologies, different ways of doing things. One of the things I've learned about heat treating is a lot of people are stuck in their ways.
Yes.
And when you ask why are we doing it this way, they say we've always done it this way. And again, some of our most successful projects have maybe been a younger engineer who's maybe from an engineering background and is more open-minded to looking at different technologies and different ways of doing things. Now, keep in mind, the reason things work is because they work. You don't change everything, but there's always the ability to do things more efficiently, save money for companies. So we like it when we have someone that's open-minded in our projects to investigate how nitrogen generation is a better solution than paying someone else to give it to you.
That's a wonderful question, and you're exactly right. And I've certainly had my failures, and I think the first advice is, if you're not failing, you're not trying. I mean, at some point you have to push things to the point where you fail. Now, you want to minimize the consequences of those failures, obviously, but that's going to happen. If you live a life without failure, that sounds to me like a pretty boring life. I think a big one is, we joke around at Stack that when we bring a new employee in, if we keep them for 2 or 3 months, they're probably going to be a lifer. It's just some people really, really like heat treating. They like the industrial setting. They love the big furnaces. They love being in a customer service sort of job. And I think this goes back to, when I was in college, I originally was I was getting a degree in chemistry. And boy, I hated it. I really did not like it. And at some point you need to say, if I don't like this now, I'm probably not going to like it later. And do I want to be in a career where I'm not liking it? I mean, I really like heat treating. I grew up in my dad's shop. I have great memories. Even when I was 10 or 11 and I mouthed off to the maintenance manager and he threw me in a quench tank, it's just still a great memory. I just love being around the heat treating furnaces. And so it's very rare I find myself having a long day. The time flies. I'm working with great people and great equipment, and we have great customers, and I really like it. And so I think it's very important. I know it's very hard when you're young, trying to figure out what are you going to do. Just get out there and get experience of things. Don't rush off to school thinking, oh, I have to get a degree now, and I don't know, so I'll be a chemist or an engineer or a political science. I mean, it's very difficult. You really need to go out and try things and see what really feels good. It's got to feel good, and if it does, you're going to have a great time with it. You're going to be very happy at work and
find your passion.
The advice I give somebody new to the industry is to understand what goes on inside of that furnace.
Okay.
They know the theoretical engineering behind what heat treat is, but they never actually get a chance to get on a heat treat floor when they're in school and look at a furnace and understand what a furnace is all about and learn how to operate that furnace. And the other advice I would give them is to understand the processes before heat treat. Find out what it takes to machine the parts or stamp or draw the parts that are being, sent through heat treat. Because we've all seen it. The part comes out of quench and it might be out of round. Well, when you follow the trail back far enough, it wasn't the heat treat that created the out of round. It was that the parts were machined out of round. And if you don't know the process before heat treat, you can't carry on intelligent conversations on how to find the solution to your problems.
Well, definitely, listen a lot more. I've been accused of time or two of I like to talk a lot, especially when we might have a beer or two. Listen a lot more. I've learned that in my older life to listen to, especially some of the older heat treaters I've been fortunate enough to meet and everything, and just suck that knowledge up, because, you know, we're all gonna, you know, you're gonna have wins and you're gonna have loses, and you know, or losses, and you know, we definitely don't want to have any losses. So I definitely tell myself to maybe, you know, just suck up some of that knowledge that you hear from people, and you know, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
that's a tough question to think about. You should have said that one to me prior.
You know, I believe it's hard for you to listen because you have a very deep voice and a very loud voice. And actually, you should start a podcast. You have a great voice. And well, I believe that's pretty true, right? There's a lot of people with a lot of experience. And when you're a young president, like, you know, I'm also 35 and I became president of the company I worked for 2 years ago. You have a bunch of drive, you believe you know everything, and there's a bunch of guys over there with a bunch of experience that they just want to try to help, right? So I'll take that, you know, listen more.
Yeah, I was told one time before by somebody that the guys that think they know everything pretty much don't know a damn thing. So
because they don't listen, they haven't learned, right? So
you know, what I've found is that the amount of time you actually spend using your degree is a very small percentage compared to using common sense and, you know, just using, because to me, engineering, sure, I know some things from a metallurgical standpoint that you don't know, Carlos, because you were in industrial, right? But we both have a certain mindset of how to approach a problem and then try to find a solution for it. It doesn't mean that we have the solution in our pocket and we're just ready to dish it out. It's okay to not know the answer to a question. It's all about, are you willing to try to find the answer to that question? And, you know, do it somewhat efficiently, of course. And you know, and that's what the company wants to see. So, you know, that's why I say when I got it out there, I was kind of embarrassed by how little I knew about heat treating when I got my first job. Although in college, they don't talk much about heat treating. That's almost like the, you know, the black sheep of the material science world.
I gotta stop you right there. So that's like a wow moment for me. So what do they teach you on metallurgical school?
Well, that's the thing. So it's really material science. So it's not that we didn't.
Well, material science, but
it's not that they didn't teach me about heat treating. It's just that
I don't want to put you in the spot, Chuck. I don't want to put you in the spot.
Heat treating classes. Okay, so
right.
I took a, you know, I would, you know, what I focused on my senior year was phase equilibria and thermodynamics and those types of things. Now you apply those to heat treating and then you get from point A to point B, but they don't teach you that you know, you core harden 4140 at 1550 Fahrenheit, you know, and that you have to, you know, oil quench it or whatever. But so, you know, when I got out there in the world, there were all these things, all these questions I had, and it was a little bit surprising, but it's like, hey, you know, this degree didn't give you all the answers to the world. It taught you how to think and how to approach a situation and then how to, you know, how to solve that. So
sure.
I would say, you know, be bold and think big. You know, it's something that, you know, we're going to see a lot of change, you know, in the next couple of decades, and you have to be willing to not let that scare you, you know, embrace it and figure out how you can take advantage of that and you know, really use it to improve yourself and your business.
Well, it's an interesting question because you certainly get a different perspective when you hit 60 years old. You think about life much differently. When I started in the business, I was always here. I was within the walls. You worked hard every day, and you really never got out and you never looked at the forest. You were always deep inside the woods. And about 20 years ago, I attended one of my first MTI events Actually, it was the FNA. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, there's a lot of things going on out there. And we were always very protectionist. You know, we were flame hardeners and we weren't going to tell anybody how we did it. And we weren't going to let anyone in our shop. And after a while, I realized, no, that's not the way it's going to work. You got to work with people. And we started to work with the MTI. We started to work with some of the associate suppliers. We've worked with some of our competitors. Now some of our competitors, they don't want to talk to us at all, but that's okay. But we've talked to others. So more of an open door policy. It's not all about what you can do just for yourself. It's get a group together and make it happen, and it happens for everybody, and everybody can win. And sometimes you don't win them all, but it keeps things moving forward.
I believe that's a great advice. You know, well, I don't know if I understand you correctly, but also it's travel, go outside your shop and take a look at other applications, other way to do things. You meant that as well, right? Talk to people, go to shows. Is that what you were trying to say?
Yes, with me, it was, you know, you always visited customers and you got to see customers' plants, but I wasn't really involved in our trade industry. Mm-hmm. I always thought that, you know, the MTI and things, it was all for the big furnace people and the people that did carburizing. And then you start to realize that these controls that you use to control furnaces, some of them can be modified and they can be used to control our process as well.
The key for me in our business is people. Equipment can be replaced. You know, you can buy those things in, but people are the key. Our business is labor intensive. So looking after your people, making sure that they have everything they need to do their job, that they're happy at work, that they're well remunerated, that they have a good work-life balance. That's the most important thing to me, because then they'll turn up every day and do what they need to do to make your business successful. Unhappy people in our industry does not make for good outcomes. So that for me is the most important thing about what we do.
No, I think if I had my daughter is an engineer from Ohio State University. My son is an engineer from University of Mount Union here in Ohio. And as engineers, you need to understand that you learn more from your failures than you learn from your successes.
I love that.
Your successes hide the probability or possibility that something could have went wrong. It didn't go wrong, so you didn't address it. Whereas a failure, there it is, it's a failure. Now, why did the part blow up? Why did the part crack? And if you can determine that and then you can then prevent it, you've learned something and you can move the technology forward. And that's literally what we've been doing since Michael Aronoff did his presentation to Professor Wallace, who said it would never work. We proved that it did work. And in fact, you know, Professor Wallace became one of our major supporters before he passed away. So at the end of the day, don't be afraid to fail, learn from your failures, address your failures, and you will find that you have a more fundamental understanding. And that's really what technology transfer is all about. You have to thoroughly understand where you've been, and then you have to thoroughly understand what happens when something goes wrong. And then you have to take that and learn from the failure and turn it into a success.
I think the first thing you have to know in this business is you've got to be persistent. You're gonna make mistakes. Your first attempt at something is not always going to be successful. And you've got to be persistent. You've got to be able to pick yourself up and try it again. And the second thing you have to do is you've got to learn from those mistakes. You've got to learn the lessons. One of my favorite is, hey, we just paid the tuition. Let's make sure we learn the lesson. And if you do that, I think that you can build a career that has a foundation of real knowledge. And then the other piece of it, I would say, is you've really got to focus on your customers. You've got to understand what your customers need. You've got to keep keep building toward that. You've got to work with them. You've got to develop their trust so that they will work with you, and that they won't try to lead things down the wrong path. It's hard to say that the customer's ever wrong, but oftentimes the customer doesn't have the benefit of our knowledge of the process, and it's a tragedy to leave, to leave them in the dark on that. You've got to lead them along, and you've got to share information so that you can together develop the right answers to their problems.
I can start that one. One thing that's changed significantly from the days when we all started our careers, at that time, most companies were not so constrained on headcount and resources. And so there might be, I know where I started, we had half a dozen metallurgists covering the special process type operations, and we weren't all that pressed for time. We had, if we wanted to, we had time to look into other things. And what's changed obviously is that now there might be one engineer covering the heat treat, but he's also covering a machining line, and he's wearing they are wearing lots and lots of hats. And so my encouragement would be to see that as an opportunity and not as a burden. The champions that we like to work with are gobbling up as much responsibility as they can and learning from all of it. And, rather than complain about, well, now I have to do this other thing, see that as a means of really expanding your capabilities.
Great, love that. Be the Champion by Steve Mouse. I love that. Jim?
Yeah, well, I mentioned already about jumping in and rolling up your sleeves, but I think the other thing is for a young guy, find a, Steve calls him a favorite uncle, somebody that you can go to get advice and to have somebody who can mentor you. And that person might not be inside your organization. You might be the only guy standing and there's nobody else that even knows what, they don't even know the oil quench from the water quench, but find somebody, find a resource that you can learn from. There's, podcasts like this, Carlos, or there's plenty of other resources out there as well. Read Dan Herring's books and dive into the ASM handbooks, and the resources are there for a guy to learn, but be eager for it, right?
Call Metal Pro.
Call Metal Pro.
Call Metal Pro, and they can and they'll get to call you Uncle Jim, right? right. Bill, any personal advice for the new generation of heat treaters?
Yeah, I think that again, both Steve and Jim gave great answers. So I get to go third, so I always got to come up with something different. But no, I'll pile on to theirs. But the other thing is, this last year and a half, won't use the words, made us work more remotely, right? But we have to find that champion. We have to find that mentor. And, I encourage, ask questions, just ask. Don't pretend you know the answer. I was at another customer site today, a brand new customer, 30 minutes from my house. I'm like, how the heck I wasn't here before? I don't know. And, but I learned more things today, and I learned because I looked and I asked questions. And that's a really good thing. When you do ask a question, listen to what the answer is. The old 2 ears and 1 mouth, take it in and then apply what you've learned. If you've learned something about that, to expand your knowledge a little bit. And I guess the other thing is, as Steve said, just quickly, is velocity. There's a lot of change in businesses right now, whether it's maybe a private equity model now or a public company in some cases. We know our heat treat industry is, there's a fair amount of investment in heat treating companies now by private equity, and they expect velocity. So as Steve said a few minutes ago, we had the luxury some 30 years ago of having a little bit more time and having the internal mentor and being able to ask questions to a lot of people. And that's not the same anymore. And but the expectations is that you're going to make decisions quickly, and that might be a little bit more pressure on the youth here than we had, because we had other people to bounce things off of. So
they need to share everything they can. I think that coming from the exact position that you're talking about, I got to work side by side with my dad for the last 9 years. He taught me everything. And without a mentor like that, it would be impossible for me to be where I am right now. So share everything that you possibly can. It means the world to us. Having a mentor, and if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, would you mind being my mentor? This is a big focus of the YES program too. Say yes and do it. It's uplifting and worthwhile, and you build relationships that you probably never thought you would have with a younger person.
Yeah, the first thing for young people mainly is to tell them that they should never be scared of making a mistake, and always try to look what kind of technologies which are on the market. Maybe also try something new, and not being scared that they lose their job when they make a mistake. Yeah, and very often it's good to talk to specialists, also like our company is, in order to find out what is really necessary. Yeah, we always want to make sure that the customer only does what is necessary and not what is recommended or wished by the designers, like I say. Yeah, because designers, they always want to have the best. Yeah, and then they tell the young people to always want the best, but the best is very often not necessary, costs a lot of money. So I always recommend also to my very young people, which come after university, to use their own brain and not only doing what other people tell them to do.
You know, from my personal experience, if you're saying in Harvard Business is promoting you should have a plan to succeed in your life. And definitely I did not have a plan, but what I have, and I encourage young people to grab the opportunities which show up on you, and you need at a specific time. If you don't grab, the opportunity is gone. So when you see it, the opportunity, go for it, because it will pay off eventually for you. Take the risk, look what people have done in the past, look what the future is, and grab the opportunity which is showing in the front of you. Don't look to the trends, which maybe today are very valid, but tomorrow maybe not. Look for the future, what you like to, and grab these opportunities to your advantage.
I would say to that person, yes, I see you're fairly bright, you're very inquisitive, you ask a lot of questions, but share the knowledge that you're learning. Okay, share it with as many people as often as you possibly can. You know, before the podcast began, we were talking about the name, the Heat Treat Doctor, and how the brand has seemed to have a life of its own, if you will. Well, part of the reason for that is the fact that I've written so many articles. I've given so many technical presentations. I've given thousands of seminars and webinars and lectures. I've written 7 books. I've actually written 10, but 7 of them in the field of heat treating. I've written thousands, maybe not 1,000. I think it's 900 and some technical articles now.
Almost 1,000.
Almost 1,000, but it's not about me. What it's about is sharing knowledge. You know, we don't want to give away trade secrets. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying put your designs out there on the internet for everyone to share, but we can help people by sharing our collective experience and having people learn from the mistakes of others. The old comment about standing on the shoulders of others to get taller than yourself. the idea is the fact that pioneers such as myself didn't always have the right tools. We didn't have always the right time or talent, but we learned through a series of mistakes. I remember when I left the R&D lab in Lindbergh, they actually cheered because I had broken and fixed every piece of equipment in that lab multiple times. I had rewired furnaces. Anyway, the idea being the fact that we as an industry need to talk to one another and we need to share. And in one way, the internet has made this easier and faster. But we as human beings have to overcome this idea of just acquiring knowledge for our own sake and not sharing it with others. So that's what the Heat Treat Doctor has learned, if you will, that everything is on the table. We have to share everything. We have to share our experiences, share our knowledge, and then the youngsters in the group, whether they be 12 years old or whether they be 72 years old, all learn, all grow, all prosper. That's my advice.
Okay, that's a good question. Another good one there, Carlos. I guess I'll think of advice. You know, there's a young man I've known through different avenues through Boy Scouts. Young man now, and I was talking to him about a month ago, and he's just getting started in his career. It's an industrial field, and I said, you know, a couple things is, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be so feel that if you're asking a question is a sign of weakness. You know, I tell them it's a sign of strength to be able to know, I don't know this, I need to ask for help. So never be afraid to ask for help, because what you'll find is there are more than a handful, plenty want to help out, answer any questions you have. You know, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. You know, that's how you're going to learn. You know, I started off at doing field service, and that was a great way for me to learn. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, and you know, don't be afraid to be an asset to the company. Take on those responsibilities and prove yourself. The only way you're going to learn is by doing. And you know, it's okay to have some hesitancy within the heat treat market, the heat treat equipment. Be careful, but you know, you can't be afraid to try new things either. Just keep you know, you gotta keep pushing the envelope forward, because the technology is always changing. So I guess that's a few things there for our younger crowd coming up, from the middle-aged dog to the young dogs. I guess that's my advice.
I heard this from one of our other members tell to a group of the YES students one time. I think it sits so well. He said, you know what? I had a chance at a young age to go work at Apple, and I had a couple offers from other big groups. And he said, you know what? That would make me a small fish in a giant pond. And he said, then I started thinking through, well, the heat treating industry, it's big, but it's not that big. But if you are young and got a good work ethic and are willing to learn, here's the thing. You have the incredible opportunity of being a big fish in a small pond. And in that small pond, people make really good money and have really good careers. I'm never amazed when I talk to somebody and I say, how long you worked here? And they go, 20 years. I'm like, you don't look old enough to be here 20 years. Well, I started when I was 20, and I've been here, I'm 40 years old, been here 20 years. I've got 3 kids. I've built a great life here, and I'm gonna be here till I retire. I talked to a guy not too long ago that been at their plant. He's gonna retire. Been there 49 years, Carlos. And when I always go back to heat treating, is not this giant, it's this $27 billion industry just in the States and Canada. So it's probably 100 billion in all over the world. But when you're looking for a job, I always go back to, you can go to an industry where you can be a small fish in a big pond, which you just don't make a lot of headway, or you can be a big fish in a small pond, and heat treating is that small pond that you can make good money and a good career. So, you know, in the industry, and remember what I said earlier, everything has to be heat treated if it's got metal in it, everything. That means that's good job security for most industries.
Okay. Well, you know, Carlos, you may not know this, but actually I started out in the IT business. That's how I got into the heat treat business.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Bob Williams, God rest his soul, hired me to come in and install his computer systems.
That's why you're so picky with controllers, Fred. Now I understand. It all makes sense.
Yeah. You know, that's how I got into the heat treat. And he, you know, he found out I'm an engineering student at the time. And That's how I got into the business. And with Bob, it was School of Hard Knocks. Both Jason and I were knocked around a little bit by Bob, but he put strong values in us in as far as being able to endure and just keep up with the this is a very difficult field to be in at times, okay, compared to the other more glamorous, Wall Street or IT or so on, that you don't get your hands dirty and to come into the into this industry. And you're 100% right. There's not many people coming into it, and the turnover is rather high for the new generation coming into this field. But we can mentor them, we can support them, and we have to make it worth their while to come into this industry. Right now, when I sit down with students from University of Toledo or so on that have conferences or they want to pick my brain about the industry, this is one of the first places I push them in, because there is a lot of vacancies here. There's a lot of great companies out here that the OEMs are great companies. The captive heat treats and the commercial heat treats are great companies to work for. And the demand is going to stay there in different forms, but they have to have perseverance and dedication to be able to put up with the long days and the hot, sweaty places and in different parts of the world, and take that experience, the hands-on experience, along with what they learned in school, putting it all together, being able to carry on a tradition of being able to design a great furnace and then make it run. You have to get satisfaction out of doing that kind of work. And there are people out there that will do it. We just have to find them and keep them. The keeping part is it's proven to be much more difficult than even finding the people.
Yeah, and I touched on it earlier, and I don't want to sound redundant, but the emphasis on the why we do things, and I actually, it seems very much a common sense thing to say, but to tell our new generation, it's so important to understand the why and start asking questions. Why am I doing this? What value does what I'm doing have? And be interested, engage yourself, and challenge the status quo. Is there a better way to do it? We see that a lot with our users, and by and large, our software users in particular are younger generation people. It's no secret that the older generation just says, I like my clipboard and I like my pencil, and I don't care to invest in the new technology, and that's fine. But the new generation has seen mobile apps, they're seeing cloud-based computing, and if we can bring those things and put them in front of them, but also educate them as to why what we do is so important. Looking around, I mean, I think there was an induction company that put together a video as to all the little things that you look around your office or your house that are heat treated, and without heat treating, we would have, I don't want to say nothing, but we would have a lot less of the modern day conveniences that we have today. And so, emphasizing the why we do what we do and what's important about heat treating is really going to attract people to stay in the industry and understand the importance of their job, whether that's being a furnace operator or a maintenance supervisor or a pyrometry technician or a heat treat owner, for that matter. So that would be my encouragement, is to get educated and not just go to a class and get a certificate, but challenge them to challenge the status quo. There's a lot of things that we're doing in this industry that are outdated, and they're there because that's the way we did them 20 years ago, and that's the way we've always done it. And I hate that cliche, that excuse. The younger generation needs to challenge it, because there are a lot of changes that need to take place and can take place to make the industry better and to attract those younger generations, to keep them here and bring them in, because we need them.
Yeah, listen to elder people that you're working with, or you probably had the honor of working with your dad, who had extensive heat treat. I guess my heat treat dad was probably Bruce Favors, and then Kyle along with him, who's an expert in his own right. But Bruce, when I worked with him, he had 40 years experience, in heat treat. So people like that are invaluable in your life. If you don't have, if you're in a facility that doesn't really have much to lean on, I mean, you had Tom Morrison on, and I can't remember if he mentioned his classes, the MPI classes. You know, they've got a subject, they've got a class for every subject you can think of, you know, maintenance to metal, you know, metallurgy,
Safety,
safety,
right,
NFPA.
leadership,
You know,
right?
Get your company to sign you up for those and do the online, and you even get a certificate. I tell people that all the time. That's a great resource, and it's just sitting there online. So, you know, I would tell younger people to, you know, take a leadership role and take what you're doing as serious, and you know, have a leader mindset, I guess. You know, you might be the only guy that really cares about that particular area of the plant. They need, what was it, Cindy and them called it a champion. You know, be that guy. You know, you're in an industry that's very small, it's a niche. If you get good at it, people will become interested in knowing what you have to say, you know, and you'll rise up. You know, Carlos, at some point a few years ago, I realized, I looked around and I was like, people my age are making big decisions and are big corporate positions, you know, late 40s, mid 40s, and kind of strange when you see, you know, people that are peers of you that, you know, are being looked to for answers. So be that person. Don't be afraid to be that person, you know. That'd be my advice, you know, maybe learn and then get cocky about it. But you know what I mean?
Patience. One of the hardest things for young engineers that I see now is patience. Have patience. Don't think that you're going to jump from a entry-level engineer to the lead engineer on the company and then to management in a matter of 2 to 3 years, maybe not even 5 to 10. Patience. That's number one. Number two is be humble. This industry that we have here is it's not rocket science, okay, but it's full of a lot of pitfalls. And as much as you may think that you know as a young engineer that you are terrific at your job, you will come upon a mistake that you do. And it's how you are able to humbly handle that mistake that you made and be able to learn from it and move forward in a good, positive attitude. Also, love your job. If you don't love your job, don't come to work just because you have to. Find a job that you love to do, where your passion is. Because when you have passion for the job that you're doing, you're going to love to come to work and you're going to show it and you're going to produce an outcome that you feel is yours. And it will be very rewarding in many respects, not just for you as an engineer, but also to those that you're delivering it to.
That's a tough one.
I know, and you're a tough guy. That's what I'm asking you on this one.
That's a tough one. It's you know, it might not be. I guess the thing is you got to find somebody with passion. So if you can take somebody with passion and have them and build them into what you need. So if you have a guy loading the furnace and he does it with a smile, I mean that's different than 99% of them. So you know he should stand out in the crowd and then educate him, make him that guy that you know, he loves what he does. And I think it's going to take that. It's not going to take just hiring a guy with a mechanical degree or metallurgical degree. I think it's going to be a lot of interacting and trying to get the passion into the person, because it's a tough industry. I mean, you can go and work on a computer all day or run an e-commerce store or what, you know, however, it's it's tough to get a guy to go out into 120 degrees every day and get black and love it. And we're I was always told we're strange because we love that, but we do love that. And heat treat is a lot of it has to do with you have to love to be there to really be good at it. And so they got to find those people. They got to find those people that love to run furnaces and do maintenance or whatever, and educate them and build them and take them up the ladder. That's really what the finisher is going to have to have.
I think the one thing the one regret that I have about when I was looking at career paths is that I didn't probe. There are some really great networks that you can take advantage of at local technical meetings for societies that are tailored to your industry, or perhaps try to find inroads into those connections. And I really value my network, my professional network, and I think I have a really great professional network. But I think I was a little late at coming to the game for some of that. And I would encourage people, you got to learn how to put yourself out there. I mean, people look at me now and they see a project in the making for several decades, but I wasn't always so outgoing when I was a student. And you have to really learn how to become outgoing and go looking for information that's not Google, because you can't Google someone's brain, the contents of their brain. And I think that was the one mistake that I made, is that I didn't work on that personal face-to-face network early enough in my career. And I would encourage you have to do that. You have to close the laptop, turn off the cell phone. Yes, they're important tools, but there's so much more that you learn from a face-to-face conversation with somebody than you can ever learn from, Wikipedia.
And you just nailed what I'm doing in here. That's why I started the podcast. Exactly what you're saying, because there's a bunch of people very interesting, with very interesting topics, very eager to talk about our industry, about or share passion, ways to do things. In your cases, ADI or Stempering. But there's guys that they just like to talk about alloy or atmospheres, brick, induction. And the more you talk to, the more you learn, because every brain is a universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
And people, and I get what you're saying. People is shy because well, just look at yourself. I was actually a little scared about having a podcast and interviewing a PhD on metallurgy. I have to be very careful of my questions, right? So just go for it. There's no don't question, And what I have found out is that people are always very happy to talk about a subject, to talk to you, to answer questions, and I do believe it's a great advice. The more you build your network, you make good colleagues, you make good you made a great network, but you also make a bunch of great friends by that share the same passion. But you have to be outgoing. You don't have to be afraid to ask. But I can't lie to you. Sometimes you feel afraid or a little fearful when you're talking to such industry figures like yourself, right? So that'll be my counter advice to you. Because when you talk to a PhD about metallurgy, you say you have to be very careful on what you say and what you ask, because it's
Carlos, we're real people too. Okay.
Yes, I understand. Just give you my feedback. But